Hi there. Welcome to our new owners webinar. We're super excited to be spending this time with you this afternoon, and we'd just like to thank you for taking the time out of your afternoon to be here. We've called it our new owners webinar, how to rent your cottage successfully. But this is going to be equally relevant to anybody who's been in the rental business for any time, really, because it's changing. As we're going to be talking about, the rental business is changing rapidly, and we're just going to bring you some of those changes and some issues that are facing rental owners today. Now, I just want to pass it over to our technical director, who's just going to do a few just give you a little bit of an admin brief.
Okay, guys. I'm Mike Bayer. I'm one of the presenters today. I see. Just to give everybody a heads up. So this is a system we're using, GoToWebinar. It's the first time we've used this system. So we've done a couple of rehearsals, and we hope everything will go well. But just to make you aware that Heather cannot see who is actually attending. Only I can see that on my computer. So if I can see that Cheryl and Simon and Barb and Bert are online. So thank you very much for joining us. What you can see on your screen looks very similar to this. Hopefully, this is a screenshot from a Mac computer. I'm sure you guys are probably using PCs. You may be using a Mac. The most important thing is this box on the right-hand side. So this is your kind of your control panel, and it's probably going to look something similar to this. I mean, as I said, this is what I get on my Mac computer. So the first thing to look at is this the top of the audio section. Now you can see in the top left-hand corner of that audio is that little upside-down triangle. If you click on that triangle and click on it again, you'll see that that section will appear and disappear. And you'll also see that your box is marked as muted. The reason that is because it's going to become quite difficult to allow people to come on using audio. So what we're going to do is ask you guys, if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to note them down in the questions box, which is below. So again, you've got the triangle in the top left-hand corner in gray, and you can type and ask questions here. Now, sometimes if you're having problems and maybe you don't feel that we're getting back to you quick enough, on the left-hand panel here you have 4 buttons. Now, the top button is will basically cause the control panel to appear and disappear. So if you lose it for any reason, try and find that little collection of 4 buttons and press on the orange one at the top, and you'll see it will appear and disappear. The next one down below that you can see is a little microphone, and that'll be shaded out all the time because everybody will be muted. If we have a small number of people at the end, we may try doing some voice questions at the very end. Below that is a button that has a square on it. And that's going to change your view of the PowerPoint presentation from full screen to a small window. And then the one below that is probably the most important button, and that's the raise your hand button. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you're having problems writing questions in where it says type questions here, you can click that button and I can see on my screen that you have a question. So aside from that, the only other thing is just on the main screen there on the top left-hand corner, you can actually change the zoom. I'm sure you guys will figure that out, but if you have any problems, you can see it right there. Don't hesitate to raise your hand or ask a question.
So you've given up your time today to come and sit with us, which is really cool. So what are you going to learn in this next probably 40 or so minutes? We're going to go through a lot of content, but what I want you to have at the end of the session is at least 3 things that you can do now to be successful at renting. We're going to talk about the differences between do-it-yourself and using a rental agency. I work for one of Ontario's top rental agencies, but I've also rented out my own properties myself and have that experience. So it really doesn't matter whether you're here today because you're going to do it yourself and do all the management yourself, or go with an agency. But we can go through the differences in those 2 separate methods. I'm going to talk about the risks of renting because nobody should be going into this business without understanding that it's not risk-free. So we're going to touch on some of those and a few ways of managing them. And we're also going to look at what our guests are looking for in 2013 and beyond, because it's quite different from what they were looking for a few years ago. So there's a lot more than that, but those are the main things that you're going to take away. So you probably you need a notebook and pen, and let's kick off. And when we get to the end of the presentation, we're going to give you a link to a free download from my site at Renting for Profit, which is a starter's checklist, which is a really valuable little download. So that's one reason for staying to the end. And the other thing we're going to offer you is a reduced price membership to our Renting for Profit website. We're going to give you a 40% discount for those people who are on the call today. So you've been hearing my voice, and most of you don't know who I am. So let's introduce ourselves. My name is Heather Bayer. I'm one of the co-owners of Cottage Link Rental Management, an Ontario-based rental agency. I'm also the author of Renting Your Recreational Property for Profit, a book I actually wrote 10 years ago, nearly 10 years ago now, and is the basis for my current website, Renting for Profit. And I also blog at Cottage Blogger and write various other articles. And my co-presenter today, one of my co-presenters today, is Craig White.
Hi, my name's Craig White. I'm the founder of Cottage Link and co-owner of Cottage Link Rental Management, and glad to be with you today.
And we have Mike Bayer here too, who you heard briefly before.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm Mike Bayer. I'm Heather's son. I am an account manager for Cottage Link Rental Management, and really hoping everybody can take a lot away from this presentation today and hopefully take something home that they will find useful with their own vacation rental.
So you're going to be hearing from all three of us during this presentation. We all come here with some fairly unique sets of skills and experiences. Between the three of us, we have a number of different websites offering a range of resources and knowledge, all focused on the vacation rental industry. And we maybe touch on some of those a little bit later on. We as a team, we're regularly featured in the media, on television, in the print media, and in magazines such as Cottage Life. And I've personally appeared on CTV, Canada AM, and Czechs television. It just seems that as the rental industry is growing, the media is getting more and more interested in it because it's something that more and more people are doing. And as I mentioned, my book, Renting Your Recreational Property for Profit, is still available on Amazon.ca and Amazon.com. And you can still go and get it there. But as I say, with our website, Renting for Profit, you're going to be able to collect resources from there. Anyway, so with that done, now you know who we are. I just wanted to touch on the first thing: why do owners rent out? And I've been renting out my own properties for over 10 years now. At one point I had 6, and I'm now down to 2 properties because of the actual work involved in running them all. But I do it for this reason. I'm an investor in rental properties, so my personal goal is wanting maximum occupancy. I don't use any of my properties at all. So I perhaps come in it from a different viewpoint from maybe other people who are on the call today. And it could be that you want to rent out to fill your empty weeks. You use the property yourself quite a lot, but you see it empty, and it just seems that you could be collecting income from it. And of course, in doing that, you could meet the financial obligations such as property taxes, mortgages, and other expenses. And many people that I talk to are doing it, they're renting out to pay their taxes. And as property taxes on vacation and second homes grow, so that's quite the burden that needs to be dealt with. And renting just does that very, very neatly. And many people do rent out just to create income for upgrading, perhaps to put an addition on the property, or for building a new deck, or even just upgrading furniture and appliances and that sort of thing. So we all come to this from different with different goals, and depending on those goals, it will really depend on the way that it will cover the ways that you look at renting out. But for the purposes of the presentation here, I'm just going to be seeing you all as people who want to get as much out of the property as you possibly can. And I'm going to hand over to Craig now, because Craig comes to this with a lot of experience of renting property in Ontario for many, many years. And he's going to be talking for a few moments about where we've come from in the rental market. Craig?
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, so any of you that have a lot of experience with cottaging will certainly understand that the market and the nature of cottages in Ontario specifically, and in Canada in general, has changed dramatically over the last 25 years. So you'll recall a time when cottages originally were very, very simple, often more cabins. It was a place where furniture went to die. It was a place that everyone would go. Really wasn't too concerned about the aesthetic. So the family cottage was really a place that was strictly almost a clubhouse, just like you had when you were kids out in the woods, and that was great. It was it worked for everyone, and that was the nature of cottaging back in the 70s, or even before then. If some of you remember back in the days before the road, the 400 or Highway 11 were really in place. It was just getting to a cottage was an adventure. But times have certainly changed since then. If we look at the rental market over the past 20 years even, just the nature of advertising and presentation. If you look at a listing for a cottage on websites from 10 or 15 years ago, really all people were doing was taking a photograph of what was there rather than presenting an experience. And there's a very significant difference between those two, and we'll show you that in a minute with a future slide. The expectations in a property, if people were booking a cottage, if you've rented a cottage 20 years ago during the 80s or 90s, what your expectation would have been very different than what guests are expecting now. So back then, people would expect to find a place, if they had running water, great. If it had electricity, great. But often it wasn't expected. People were looking for something that was a cut above camping. They might have arrived and expected to clean up a little. Again, that's all changing, and it's very different. Likewise, the expectations of what would be on an owner has changed. So again, back in the 70s or 80s, people really didn't expect the owners to bend over backwards. The nature of cottage country was very much relaxed, laissez-faire. You would show up and kind of get what you got and be happy with it. And there was a certain charm about that, and it's something that we have somewhat lost, but we have to look at market realities. People now expect a level of customer service that is more in keeping with modern facilities and hotels and resorts and things like that. So I was talking a bit before about the images that you used to get and used to be presentable in an ad. So this is something we might have seen even 10 or 15 years ago. Really no staging, no prep. The photos in themselves or the facilities in themselves are not bad, but in terms of their presentation, it's not suitable today. With digital photography being what it is, people will take the time to take 150 photos and pick the best 5, as opposed to worrying about what they were spending on film 15 years ago and kind of taking the first 5 photos that they got. So if you are going to be competing online for renters and guests and viewership, you really need to have your presentation in line. Now, I need to prepare you a bit for the next slide. If you're a bit squeamish, you might want to look away. But Heather, if you want to flip that next slide for me. This is an ad we came across for a villa in Spain. And it kind of speaks for itself. This is someone who has photographed what is there, not the experience, and it just, to me, doesn't look like an experience that I want to share. Having said that, I'm sure the villa is probably a very nice place to be with surroundings, but just not necessarily one that we'd like to promote as advertising. And by the way, this isn't from a long time ago. This was online this year in 2012. So it's something. This is a bit extreme and it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but this was an actual listing, and we show it to consider that there are some people that don't consider all these things when they're starting out. So now we've moved.
I looked at that one, Craig, in the beginning when I found it, and I thought, I was talking at a seminar at the Cottage Life show, talking about, you've got to put photographs that's going to elicit desire in people, and then I had to change the way I worded my speech. So yeah,
Okay.
that was something else. So let's move on. Moving on to having gone from where we've come from. I mean, we have come a long way, and where we are now is to show properties at their absolute best. Now, this is one of our flagship properties, and it is an absolutely stunning property. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the way it's presented with its clean lines, the fireplace with the fire lit, the brightness in the photography, the staging is just really, really nice, and that's where we are now in presenting properties and really thinking about how that presentation is done. So we're about staging now. We've gone away from the picture of the kitchen with the garbage pail in the corner and the dog bowls on the floor. And as I saw one recently with half a dozen empty beer bottles on the side in an ashtray. And we've gone from that into staging photographs with lights on, with flowers, with bowls of fruit. Staging is the key to presenting properties in these days. This is what people are looking for. So bedrooms are selling, we're selling different things. We're not just selling a roof over the head. We're selling things like comfort and style. And people, guests, will look at these photographs that they're seeing on a listing, and they want to imagine themselves being there. So if you think back to that earlier photograph of the bed, the unmade bed, that is such a turn-off nowadays. And guests who are looking at a listing, they want to see a bed and imagine themselves at the end of the day climbing into that bed and having a good night's sleep. So we're selling comfort, we're selling style, and of course we're selling dreams. People are spending a lot of money on their vacations. I put this photograph up. This is the one that I saw 2 years ago of a property in Costa Rica called Flying Toucans. and the photograph absolutely sold it for me, and I had to go there. And we did in February of this year. Myself and my husband Phil and Mike and his wife went and spent a week at Flying Toucans. But this was a photograph that sold the dream of Costa Rica for us. Unfortunately, when we got there, it was as depicted in the photograph, and we just had to swap the person on the airbed out for one of us, and we had a fabulous time. But that photograph sold us the dream. So this is where we are now, remarkably different from where we were in the rental market internationally 10 years ago. And this rental market is growing exponentially. If you've ever heard, I don't know if you would have heard of Airbnb. It's been around for maybe 2 to 3 years, not very long, and it's a listing site, and they sell not only vacation rentals in the traditional sense, like we're doing on a week-to-week basis, but they also offer just beds in homes. So if somebody's traveling around the world, they've got the opportunity that they can go from home to home and just stay a night with perfect strangers, almost like a bed and breakfast. But it's just got a slightly different slant on it. But Airbnb was valued at $2.5 billion in the last couple of weeks. I'm thinking, hopefully everybody's heard of HomeAway, which is the largest listing site in the world, and they have over 350,000 listings. So when you're thinking competition, there is a huge amount of competition out there now, and that's why HomeAway have been able to increase their revenue in the past year to 73.1 million over the previous year. And they're continuing to grow. On a slightly smaller scale, but no less important, ourselves, Cottage Link Rental Management as an agency, has seen growth of this nature every year for the past 5 years, and possibly more. And we grow 20 to 26, 27% every year. And that's in terms of listing new properties, and also in selling the property, the weeks that we have available for rent. So it's big changes going on, and Mike's going to tell us a little bit more now about how these changes are impacting us as owners.
So I think one of the biggest things for being representatives of Cottage Link Rental Management, and we're based here in Ontario, is a lot of our knowledge is very much based around the Ontario cottage rental industry. But a lot of these changes really are occurring on a much wider scale. And there's countries all over the world that are just booming now with vacation rentals. I mean, Heather already mentioned Costa Rica. That's becoming a huge destination. And if you go down and you look at some of those listing sites and look at those listings, you can see how these individual owners have taken properties that back in the 70s and 80s were really maybe not as desirable, certainly not as desirable as we'd want now, but they were still destinations that people would go to just because it was the destination. It's more than the destination now, and especially with our industry in Ontario, because people are now spending a lot more money on vacations closer to home. The reason being is that the price of fuel, the international economies, things are getting more expensive to leave home. So the staycation is becoming a lot more of a desirable package. So some of the things that we're really encouraging our newer owners to consider, and also owners who are planning on doing rental for the first time, is looking at different parts of the rental process. And one of the things that we come across quite often as a very important point for guests is the cleaning. And if anybody who's spoken to us previously understand that we really talk about this a lot, is ensuring that the property is in an immaculate condition when the new guests arrive. But at the same time, you have to be considering the guests who are leaving and the kind of things you are asking them to do. Now, are you asking them to leave it as they found it? So they're responsible for doing the cleaning. Now, this is going to really impact the very end of their stay. They probably had a great 6 days, beautiful weather, but now they're going to get up on a Saturday morning. If you do a Saturday turnaround, they're going to have to get up super early. If they've got a larger family, say 4 bedrooms, you're looking at 8 people, they have to be out by 11, and that amount of work to prepare the cottage, to comply with the rental agreement, to leave it as found, really is not what you should be asking your guests to do. And you see on the screen there that we're talking about leaving as found versus professional cleaning. Now, the thing is we are going to be, as good, responsible vacation rental owners or cottage owners, we should be going in between every single rental, and that's a must, to go in between every rental and check the property. And you should really be going over the cleanliness of the bathrooms, the kitchen, sweeping the floors. So why would you ask your guests to do it when you're either going to go and do it anyway, or you're going to have a cleaning company come and do it anyway? So really, you might as well just ask the guests to do the minimal amount, which is just remove their garbage, remove their own things, maybe strip the beds, but that's it. Bring in the professional cleaning company, and you're going to have very, very happy guests at the end of the day. So another thing we're looking at is also the quality of the amenities and things that you're supplying in your vacation rental. We've talked about already the standards of yesteryear, and how cottages very quickly become a dumping ground for TVs, fridges, couches, beds, mattresses, pillows. That becomes a dumping ground from your primary residence. Now, if you really want to be successful as a vacation rental owner, you want these people to come back, this is not the thing you should be doing. You should be really thinking about what your guests want, and in fact, what you want. If you're spending anywhere between $1,500 and $2,000 a week to go and stay at a property, you want some really good quality things. And it may seem a little elaborate looking at the screen now, the chrome or the stainless steel fridge and the TV system, but these are things that people are really looking for. If not stainless steel, certainly new or newer white appliances. The TV, some people will say, I will never put a TV into my cottage. But the problem is that you have to be thinking about what your guests need and not what you need. That is going to be a big issue. We've had rentals in the past where people have rented specifically during a sports event season, during the Olympics, for example, in 2012, during the 2011 World Soccer, the World Cup. We had guests arrive at properties where there was supposed to be a TV, and there was a TV, but there was no satellite. And they were very upset because that was part of their vacation, is the fact that they could sit, relax, and do what they wanted to do. So you should really think about upgrading your appliances, upgrading your amenities to something newer, more modern, and you're going to end up with just happier renters who are going to want to come back. Now, this also comes on to bed linens. We've already talked about the photographs in terms of making sure that you're staging your bedrooms with quality linens, so it gives that inviting appeal. It's all a marketing ploy to bring people in. You're selling that image, you're selling that dream. You want your guests to feel comfortable even before they arrive. Now, what you may do currently, if you're already renting, or if you're thinking about renting, is that you may think that providing linens is an extra expense, it's a lot of extra work, we're going to have to wash them, all those kinds of things. There's many problems associated with people bringing their own linens. I'm going to touch on it very briefly, but recently in the hospitality industry, certainly in the hotel industry in Ontario and in North America, bed bugs have become a big issue. And what's going to happen is your guests may come and stay at your property. You're not providing your own linens, so they're bringing their own linens from home. They may not even wash them. And as awful as that may sound, they may not even wash those linens, take them straight off their home beds and put them on the beds at your cottage. You have no idea the cleanliness of the renters. You can only do your best. So again, providing the linens, providing a good quality, comfortable bed for your renters is the way to go. And you just have to work at those systems in terms of, if you're providing linens, you obviously have to have at least 2 full sets of linens for each bed. So when you're doing the turnaround, you can strip that bed, take those away and launder them during the week, bring them back and replace them the following week. So you have this cycle of constantly clean linens going onto the beds. And we also encourage all our owners to provide duvets and not comforters. The reason being is you can strip the duvet cover, you can wash it, you can put it back on. The same with the pillowcases. Try not to provide shams that can't be washed. Make sure you're providing everything has to be washed between each rental. And then after that, it's the additional items that you may want to budget for. These are certainly not items that we would say that you have to have for rental. But a hot tub is a great example, as well as a sauna, for those winter rentals. You're going to get much better return on your investment from these two items. And now sauna can either be built into the house, or you can buy them, whether external units in the garden. But these will bring in your off-season and winter rentals where you may not have had a popular rental period before. They photograph pretty well, and they're going to bring a lot more people in. Again, high-speed internet. Now, this can be a challenge in cottage country. We have large areas where you can't get like a direct line of sight, but it's really important that you look into whether or not you can provide high-speed internet. And if you can't, then maybe provide a 3G or an LTE turbo stick. If you're not sure on that terminology, you can look that information up. So that was 3G or LTE turbo stick. And that's a product you can provide in the cottage that allows your renters who are coming in, a lot of people, when they're coming on vacation, they can't get away from work. They have to keep up. They maybe have 100 to 150 emails a day, and if they're away for a week, you can only imagine how many emails they're coming back to. So they like to keep up. So providing that service, again, makes it a lot more desirable for people coming to your property. And things like air conditioning. This summer, and especially with the change in the climate that we're finding in Ontario, we're getting hotter and hotter and hotter summers. Now, again, I've met a lot of owners who don't feel that air conditioning is something that they should be providing at their cottage. But again, you have to think about the comfort of your guests. You want to ensure they're having a comfortable time. If it's 35 degrees at night, you want to make sure they're having a nice, restful sleep, because you want them to leave and go home after having a wonderful time and completely refreshed.
Thanks, Mike. We're going to move on to some questions you need to consider before renting out. And for some of these are pretty tough things to think about. You know, will you accept the risks of rental? Because there are a number of risks. And as I said earlier, I've been doing this for a lot of years, probably about 15 years that I've been renting out properties. And you know, in those 15 years with I think I've had 7 rental properties in those years. And the most damage that has ever been done at any time has been a broken hot tub cover. I think that was the highest level of damage we've ever had. Now, my current property, Osprey Cottage, is rented for something like 30 weeks of the year. Not 30 complete weeks, but over the course of the year, we rent around about that amount of time in weeks and weekends. So take that over 7 years, over 10 years and 7 properties, and really it's low risk, but there are risks. And this is one of them that is we are constantly asked about when we talk to new owners. They worry about overcrowding. And please take these photographs as a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because they're not designed to scare you away. They're just designed to get you thinking about some of the things that can happen. And you know, overcrowding, when we do experience it, is not usually young people, because as a rental agency we screen out young groups anyway. But it's more so that people renting property, renting vacation homes, don't quite understand the restrictions that we need to place on occupancy. So if you're not very specific to your guests, they will think that, you know, if you've got 10 beds in the property, then and several of those are doubles and queens, then you'll be able to accommodate as many people as will fit into those beds. So if you only want to have a maximum of 4 adults and a few additional children, you have to be very specific about it. And also about day guests, because we've talked to many guests who have been surprised when we've said we need to know that you're bringing day guests, because the cottage systems have maximum capacities, and we can't have a group of 6 people going to a cottage and then having a wedding in the middle of the week and having 100 guests, which has been known to happen. So there is a risk of overcrowding. Good screening gets over that, and certainly with an agency, you'd expect that they would do the thorough screening for you. But thorough screening also covers the risk of getting the right guests. And before you go into this, you need to decide who the right guests are, what the right match is for your property. We have a number of properties registered with us. My newest property is one of them that is not suitable for small children. The waterfront is frankly quite dangerous for small kids, so we do not allow any children under the age of 7. We have other guests or other owners who just want families. We have others who would prefer not to have any children at all. So it's worthwhile, if you're going to get the right guests, you need to decide at the very outset what your target audience is. And if you're working with an agency, then you let them know what guests you're looking for. And if you're doing it yourself, you need to make sure that you get that communication with your potential guests, so you ask the right questions of them before they come. And that's something that's really important, this relationship, to manage the risks. One of the best methods of doing that is to get the relationship right as well. So it's not a matter of just accepting a booking over the phone or accepting a booking via email. It's really worthwhile getting on the phone, talking to people, asking why they chose your property. Ask some questions that will elicit the sort of answers you're looking at how they expect to use the property. And we often get this. We'll get on the phone with a potential guest, and we'll start saying, well, what made you choose this property? And then we'll hear well, it looked really big, so it looked great for the birthday party we're planning on having. And of course that will ring some alarm bells, and it may be a very small party with the 6 or 8 people that were on an application, but it also may be that they intended inviting another 20 guests. So having that communication with guests long before they book is really important, and it does help manage the risk. One of the risks of renting is having neighbour issues, and it is really important to get on the right side of your neighbours at the very outset. Let them know what you're doing. Tell them that you're going to be a responsible owner and offer your property in a responsible way. And that means, because your neighbours are going to be as concerned over the overcrowding issue and the getting the right guests issue as you are. So have a discussion with them. And what we've always done with our neighbours is really take the ploy with them that there are sort of eyes on the ground, not that we want them to spy on our guests, but we let them know that how many people we've got in each group, and ask them very nicely if they've got any issues, if they've got any problems. Here's a telephone number, just call us and let us know. And this is what we do with our registered owners with our agency. We ask them to tell their neighbours to call us if they've got an issue. And so far, that really seems to work, and it does get the neighbours on side. There will always be 1 or 2 who do feel that the whole issue of renting out is not something that they're happy with, but it is something that you have to deal with right at the outset. And of course, there is a risk of damage. As I say, with the 7 properties we've had over 15 years, I think we had 1 burn mark on a deck at one property when somebody lit a firework several years ago. But there is a risk, and there is a risk, very, very, very small, of catastrophic damage. So you just need to make sure that you have good insurance to cover your rental. And just because you have good insurance for the property does not mean it will cover you to accept paying guests. And I can't overstress the importance of this, because I did hear of one incident a couple of years ago where a property did get badly damaged. I think it was water damage, and because there were rental guests in there at the time, although the rental guests had nothing to do with the water damage, the insurance company would not pay up because the owner was not covered for offering the property for rental. So that is something I would not recommend ever, to go into renting unless you've got adequate insurance on the property. Another question to consider before you start to rent is how much you'll want to use it yourself. If you currently use it a fair amount, do you have a lot of personal stuff in there? Because you're going to have to move that out, or at least tidy it away in locked cupboards before you offer it for rental. I'm a renter myself. We rent 4 or 5 properties every year, and I freely admit that when I go into a property, I will open every single cupboard and every single drawer. I look under the beds. I'm not sure what I'm looking for. Maybe it's because I'm in the business. I'm looking to check for cleanliness. But if you use a property a lot yourself, you're going to really need to consider what you do with your personal things. You also need to consider that the things that are in there that you've been very, Craig mentioned this earlier on, that you've been very comfortable with for a long time, that they may not be the best quality for guests. So you probably need to balance the time that you want to use it against the time and the income that you'll get from renting it out. Another question: are you ready to become a provider to the tourism industry? And this is really important. As a responsible rental agency, we are registered with the Travel Industry Council of Ontario, which is it's a legal requirement for all rental agencies in Ontario. But in Quebec, say, private owners who are renting out in Quebec must be registered with their tourism department. In other areas of North America, and I know in some areas of other areas of the world, that anybody renting out their property has to be registered with a local agency. And this means you become a provider to the tourism industry, and there's a lot of responsibilities that go with that, which include ethical advertising and making sure that you deliver on promises and treat your rental guests as tourists and travellers, and with the respect that they deserve. And the final question I'm going to look at is: will you do it yourself or use an agency? And I'm going to come back to this a little bit later on, and Craig's going to have a few words on this one, because these are the 2 separate ways of doing it. You can do it all by yourself, or you can engage a rental agency or a property management company to do all the work for you, but of course that has a cost involved with it. So, having considered all those questions, we now want to look at what guests actually want. And I'm going to pass this over to Mike to talk about what today's guests are like.
So one of the things we've talked about several times today is the experiences that guests have already had, and kind of what they're expecting from renting your property. Because today's guests are very different from what they used to be 15, 20 years ago. Today's guests they're technologically savvy, which means that they will not, or very few of them will go out and rent a property unless it's actually been reviewed. Quite often, I think you'll find if you want to go and buy a vacuum cleaner, if you want to go and buy basically any appliance, a fridge, a tumble dryer, a washing machine, you're going to spend the time before you buy to go online and check out other people's reviews and what they think of that product. And that's really coming into our industry. the cottage industry in Ontario, you're going to find more properties now that are being listed on TripAdvisor. You're going to find more properties listed on other review sites like Flipkey. And they're also very open on social media as well. And what I mean by that is that a good owner will be advertising their property as a business, say on Facebook or on Twitter, and they may have their own website. So these are things that you want to be thinking about, is that's what the guest is looking for. So those are the kind of things you want to be providing as an owner. So making sure that your property is reviewed and it's available for people to read reviews. Having your own website, being active on social media. These are things that as an owner you should be thinking about to provide for what those guests are looking for. They're also very demanding. And what I mean by demanding is that they're expecting a lot more out of owners in terms of customer service. So they want somebody to be available 24 hours a day when they're at the cottage, who they can call if they have a problem. If a fuse blows, if they want directions or recommendations for the best restaurants in the area, what's the 18th hole like at so and so golf course 5 minutes down the road. These are things as an owner, if you can provide that excellent level of customer service that again these guests have found at other resorts and other destination vacations that they want to experience here at home. They also have much higher expectations. And what we mean by that is when you're placing your property on a listing site or with an agency, you have to ensure that the description of the property is very accurate. Those higher expectations are that if an owner reads a listing and the listing reads that the property has a sandy beach, they're picturing the photograph on the left. Even though the photograph on the right is of a sandy beach and it's probably a very beautiful property by the looks of it, you have to be very descriptive in terms of how you're presenting your property. And when we talk about ethical marketing, yes, if that was my property on the right, I would say it's a sandy walk-in, approximately 6 to 8 feet wide, and then you provide a photograph as well. And that's the most important thing, is if you're using something in your property as a selling feature, you have to ensure that you're backing it up with legitimate evidence, like a photograph or a video of the property. So having those higher expectations, these guests are bringing that from, as I mentioned, destination vacations they've had before. They've had the luxury villa with the infinity pool. They go to a hotel and it's immaculately turned out, and the bed's turned down, and the sheets are all pristinely white and fluffy, and they're going to go into the bathroom and they're going to find a selection of soaps and conditioners. Now, there are many cottage owners who think, I don't need to provide that. That seems way over the top. But why wouldn't you? The biggest thing is that the cost of doing that at the end of the day is so negligible, because what is the holy grail of cottage rental is the return guests, and also those guests telling their 10 friends how great a stay they had at your property. So you want to make sure that they're feeling welcome. You want to make sure that they are just going to have an experience at your property that they hopefully wouldn't find anywhere else. And to do that, they're looking for these items. They want the property to be spotlessly clean. We mentioned before, feature filled. As much as you can within your budget is the biggest thing I think you can take away. If you can afford the high-speed internet, if you can afford the full satellite package, if you can buy an inexpensive games console on eBay and provide that, that's something great for the kids. Things like that. Comfortable furniture and beds. Myself at my property, I have a property called Seabreeze. You can see on the photograph on the right there. We have a couch that is really just kind of just not as comfortable as it used to be. And we know as guests that we really want those guests to have a comfortable stay. So we're going to be changing out that furniture. So you have to be constantly upgrading, making sure the property is in good condition. And that really comes down to the attention to detail. Sweeping out the dust bunnies from underneath the couch, making sure the property's clean all the time. And all this comes together to make sure that they feel welcome. And there's lots of little things you can do. You can provide a bottle of wine. You can provide a welcome letter. You can also, as I've done at my property, we put a chalkboard up in a very prominent space and allow people to feel that they're truly welcome when they walk in the doors. The first thing they see has got their names on the board. If they're bringing a dog, we'll say welcome Mike and Andrea and your furry friend. Um, all those little things come together to ensure that the customer service that you're providing to your guests is as best as it can be, because you want those renters to keep coming back. And I think that's a really important point to take away.
Yeah, and what we're talking about here, of course, is this really competitive market we have. You know, going back to that slide about HomeAway and Airbnb and those the huge, the exponential growth in the market. In a competitive market, we've got to be different. We can't just be the same as our neighbour who's renting out. So here's a few ideas on how to be different. And the first one is, you know, under promise and over deliver. Mike was just talking about that. He was just with that welcome he mentioned with the chalkboard. Now that's over delivery of a welcome. And you can do this in a lot of different ways. Accepting pets. We find that 60 to 70% of our rental guests are bringing their pets, and they want them to be welcomed. Not just, I've said accept pets, perhaps I should have changed that to welcome pets. Because in my new cottage, I have a little corner, just like Mike does, which is a pets corner. And we provide dog bowls, dog blankets, used towels for them to wipe their feet. It's just something else. Those people will come back again and again because you like their pets. We've already mentioned including post-rental cleaning and providing high-quality linens, and that is those are the ways of being different in this competitive market. So, do you do it yourself or do you use an agency? You know, let's have a look at what the difference is. If you're going to do it yourself, and I know a lot of people are out there who want to, who say, well, I can do it myself. It's going to be cheaper because agencies charge commission. I'd just like to ask you to think about valuing your time, because if you put a value on your time, particularly a dollar value on each hour that you work, just think about this. This is what you have to do when you do it yourself. You need to build a website and your social media connections, and that means getting into Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, perhaps LinkedIn, getting your message out, starting a blog, and writing articles perhaps. You need to market on listing sites, which comes quite pricey. HomeAway now, to get a featured listing is somewhere like $375, and HomeAway is probably only one of the listing sites that you would need to be on. You need to create a booking system, invoices, statements, follow-ups, all the administration that goes along with it, so that you never double book, which is a great fear of a lot of people who do it themselves. Manage email and phone inquiries, remembering, of course, that once you've got the place fully booked, that phone doesn't stop ringing and the email doesn't stop coming, and you still have to keep responding to them. And of course, you still have to follow up and collect reviews. I'm not against doing this yourself, and I know many people who do it very, very successfully, and they love it. They love the constant contact with people. But the other method, of course, is to use an agency. I'm just going to hand over to Craig to just to talk about what an agency will offer you.
Thanks, Heather. Certainly, any agency in Ontario, first off, is going to be professionally registered, as we mentioned before. Any agency operating must be TICO registered and follow TICO regulations in terms of accounting and fund handling and ethics. Any agency is going to have a professional website. They're going to already have the traffic in place. So once a cottage is listed, I know, for example, on a number of agency sites in Ontario, a listing will go up and will be taking rentals within 24 hours. You want when guests call, you want them to receive a response. You want them to know that they're dealing with an active organization. So consider an agency that's going to have a 24-hour answering service. And of course, an agency should be fully versed with cottage country. They should have experience in not just cottage country areas, but in the industry as a whole. I'm going to talk a little bit about CLRM in particular, our own agency. This is really kind of the commercial at the end of the presentation, if you will, but just want to talk a bit about what we offer should you decide that you might wish to explore an agency. We've been in business since 2003. We are now doing in between 1,500 and 2,000 bookings every year, so we are quite proficient at it. We have a staff of 5 to 6 people at peak time. We have account managers for each region in Ontario. They're familiar with all the cottage country areas. They can advise you specifically for your area and assist you with marketing and what's going to help you locally as well as province-wide. We offer a number of online options, including our owner forum, which is our group site. We've mentioned renting for profit, as well as the general knowledge that our account managers can offer to our owners on an individual level. We are also actively involved in all social media, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, as well as blogs. And we've just recently rolled out the first Canadian rental hospitality app. This is as I say, it's very new. It's basically going to be a smartphone concierge service. So when guests of our cottages arrive, they'll be able to find out all the nearest attractions, how to get the keys. Anything they're going to want to know about the property is now going to be in the palm of their hand. That's becoming more and more important as smartphones penetrate the market. We find that virtually every rental group now has at least one smartphone, and this is the way really that people want to receive their information. So we're really, it's in part getting out in front of the market, but very soon it's going to be a reaction to market realities.
That's great, Craig. Thank you. I think you've done a super job selling Cottage Link Rental Management. As an owner of a lot of properties, when I first started out, I wish there'd been an agency like this that would have helped me out. And so, well, of course, that's why we started it, you and I. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. I just wanted to recap on what we've covered here. The 3 things you need to do to be successful at renting. We've talked about being professional. And I think that's really, really important, that we are now providers to the travel industry, not just Joe Blow just renting out his cottage. We need to be willing to upgrade services and amenities to meet the demands of today's rental guests. And we need to stand out from the competition, to do something different, to make a rental guest look at a listing and go, that's the one I want to be at, and not the other similar one that's close by. We also covered the differences between do-it-yourself and rental agencies, and the risks of renting, and went into briefly into how to manage those risks. And finally, we discussed what guests are looking for, and I hope I've got across how rental guests have changed so dramatically. That does bring us to the end, and in a few moments I'm going to open up for any questions that you might have. But for now, for those of you who've stayed the course, I'd really like to offer you the opportunity to download our new owner checklist. It's available at www.rentingforprofit.com/new owner checklist.html. If you go there, you can download the free new owner checklist, and it's got a lot of stuff in there that will help you out if you're just starting out. Also, we're offering 40% discount membership for rentingforprofit.com. And once again, go to www.rentingforprofit.com/promo membership.html. And the membership is normally $47, I believe, Mike. And we're offering it at a 40% discount to attendees at this webinar. Now, Renting for Profit has a ton of resources. I actually took most of what I wrote in the book, Renting a Recreational Property for Profit, and then took it apart into small bite-sized pieces and articles and downloads. So you'd find all that on there. In fact, just about anything you needed to get your business off the ground. Okay, so if you have any questions, then you just need to type them into the little block on the right-hand side, and we're going to be here for another 10 minutes or so, just answering any questions you have. I'd like to thank you all for attending. It's been really great to do this. It's been really exciting for us to put it together. We would like to hear from you. If you'd just like to email us after the webinar, let us know if there was what you thought. I was going to do a survey, but decided that really, if you've got something you'd like to share with us, then probably better if you just to write it down in an email and let us know. And of course, we'll answer any other questions.
I think that just about wraps it up, don't you think, guys?
I think so. I'd like to thank. I mean, we still have quite a few people still hanging around here, so thank you very much for staying with us for this length of time. I really hope we've given you some value for the time that you've given up this afternoon. We've certainly enjoyed doing it. It's been a blast.
Thank you very much, folks.
And thank you, everybody. And keep in touch if you decide not to rent with Cottage Link Rental Management. Please visit our website often, as we will be doing more of these webinars, and also through rentingforprofit.com as well. So please keep in touch, and if you're interested in having us come and view your property, again, we've got you the information for the people who signed on today. And if you have any friends as well, don't hesitate to get into contact us at info@clrm.ca, or they can visit our website at clrm.ca. Thanks very much, everybody, and have a great afternoon.